Hi, Lucy. I'm C. I'm calling this series Notes to Lucy, but it could also be to Annie or Lily or Connie or Luis or John. It could be to any number of young people that I have spent time with over the years, and some that have talked to me and some that haven't. Often what's happening for people like you, Lucy, is that you are an adult. You transitioned into adulthood and you get here and you're all excited to be here, but it actually is kind of hard, right? It's a little bit scary. You're expected to just go off and go to college or get a job, get an apartment or get roommates or figure it all out. And it's really hard because emotionally, you don't feel quite as grown up as you wish everybody would see you as. And I totally understand that. And the reason I understand that is that I was a kid who had trauma in my early years. And so I had complex developmental trauma. And I was always very in charge of things. I'm very smart. I was very in charge of things, but I always felt a little young inside because I really was. And I needed more help than I was willing to ask for. I got into a lot of difficulty because I wouldn't ask for help. So I know you're not asking me for help. And I always say that if someone's not asking you for help, don't assume that you can just give it to them because it's insulting. So that's why I'm making the videos, because you can just choose to turn it off at any time. And then you could say, no, I don't need your help. And that's cool. I get it. But if you did want to understand a little bit more about what might be going on with you, then maybe you want to listen to the rest of the videos. It's up to you. So here's the thing. If you're seeing this video, it's because you think you have complex developmental trauma. That means you probably are adopted, and it probably means that you have more than one kind of trauma in your childhood. So there's the breach of attachment between your biological parent and you, whenever that occurred, whether it was in the hospital or it was 8 months later, or it was 4 years later, or 8 years later, you had an attachment breach from your biological parent. Some of you had more than one, right? So you go into the arms of someone else and you bond there for a while, and then, oh, not here, you got to go somewhere else, and on until before long you've had a lot of different attachments. And what that means is you've had a lot of different detachments, right? You've lost a lot of people. What happens in the heart of a child, a very young child, actually any child developing under 2 is going to get a real sense that the world is unsafe and that they need to harden up and shut those feelings down and guard their hearts. But also they may get the feeling that they are not lovable, they're not wanted, and the world is a cruel and uninviting place. So if this sounds something like what you think about things, not entirely, not 100%, I know, everybody has their own story. But the thing that's true for everyone is that regardless of what your history is, what your story is that gets you to adoption, once you get to adoption and you get these new parents, you're pretty much not really interested in them that much, right? They aren't quite right. They don't smell right. They don't look right. They don't talk right. They're taking you to another town, another home. They have other siblings. You have to share things. You have to learn new things. Some of you don't even have the language of the new parents. I know that was true for you, Lucy. You didn't even have the language. So what a scary thing to have happen to a child. And that in and of itself is traumatic. So you lose your biological parents somewhere, then you get shipped off somewhere else, then you lose those people, and so on and so forth. And even if you don't, you come into the arms of your adopted parents like right away, right out of the hospital. You still lost your biological parents, and you are traumatized as a result of that. Now, nobody did it maliciously, meaning no one wanted to hurt you. No one didn't want you. That's hardly ever the case. I've been working in this field for 40 years, and I have yet to run into a mother who didn't want to keep her child. Circumstances don't always allow that. So that idea that young people get that they aren't loved is really erroneous. But you are feeling something, and I want to talk to you about what that is that you're feeling that you don't quite understand. We are hardwired to love. We are hardwired to want to have our children and to want our parents back. It's biological in nature. It's not even a thought. The thing that most kids who are adopted feel is this kind of universal feeling in their chest. Some feel it in their throats, some feel it in their gut. But it's still universal in that it feels the same. It feels like you weren't loved. It feels lonely. It feels gnawing and nagging and tearing at your heart a little bit, like you can never fill it up. And not only that, but the people who are supposed to be filling it up, you're told, are your parents. And most of the time, you just keep pushing them away, right? Because they just don't fit for you, or you feel like you don't fit for them. I totally get that too. But what you're actually feeling has nothing to do with your parents. And it actually doesn't really have anything to do with you either. It has to do with what happens to the mind-body processes when you get separated from your biological parents. You actually don't develop certain things that help you manage feelings. And when you don't manage feelings, your entire system changes. Your hardwiring changes. You're actually not hardwired like every other human being that had a secure attachment and who didn't lose their biological parent. It's actually true. You are different. And it's not because you're bad, and it doesn't mean you're broken, and it doesn't mean you can't get better. It means that what you're experiencing is a real thing, and it needs to be honored, right? Your parents need to honor it. I want to honor it. But most of all, I want you to learn how to honor it so that you can feel better about yourself and begin your healing process. So that burning, gnawing hole in your chest feeling, that loneliness that never goes away, that real desire to be loved at the core of your being, who feels unloved at the core of the being, who feels unwanted at the core of your being, that part comes from the separation from your biological parents. That is a feeling that is what we call on the body. Your body remembers. Your body remembers even though your brain doesn't. There's a certain name for that. I'm not going to get all scientific on you, but there is a name for it. And so we have those kind of memories that live in our bodies. That's why you can still feel your baby feelings, even though you're not aware they're your baby feelings. Not only that, but when you feel your baby feelings, you may also think it's about what's right in front of you, like your adoptive parents. And so you project those feelings onto other people. And that's natural and it's normal and it happens all the time. The thing I want you to know, though, is that you're doing that. And you can stop it once you understand it. Because when you continue to do that, you end up not getting the love that's right there, right in front of you, right? From your parents who really could just not do more for you. They want to do so much for you. And a lot of times you just won't let them, right? And that's true of every adopted young person, especially those who are guarded and were harmed in their childhood and who came into their adoptive homes later in life. It's particularly hard for you to let your guard down and for you to trust. And that's okay. It's really okay. But what I want you to hear is it has nothing to do with your parents and everything to do with your biology. And so if you took ownership of that, it would be a lot easier for you to feel better about yourself, but also about the people in your life. That hole that you sometimes feel, that deep loneliness and painful gnawing that you have, that something's missing or that you just can't get enough of what you need, that piece is often there because of what happened to you, not because of who you are, but because of what happened to you. And the reason I can know that is that it's universal. Every youth I work with feels this way. Deep down, they don't admit it to everybody because it's vulnerable, makes them feel weird and broken a little bit. They're not, but they have been harmed just like you. And they need to heal, just like you. Like most everybody, some people just don't know it. I wanted to let you know that one of the things, besides rejecting those people right in front of you, like parents who want to love you, you kind of push away their love because it feels suffocating or intrusive or, I don't know, infantilizing somehow. It makes you just seem small and like they're perfect and you're broken and all that. I totally get that. But then what happens is this mad chase happens for you to find someone else to plug into that place, to make yours. Some people chase having a baby. They want to have a baby of their own, to love and to have that baby love them. This is a mistake, of course, because babies grow up and move away. And then you're left without that love in the way that you maybe feel like you need it. And then you have that hole in your heart again. But actually, besides seeking a child to fill that up, a lot of times people seek a partner to fill that up. They seek a partner who will fill them up without much request, meaning they will give you love if you do whatever they want. And as long as you're doing what they want, they will give you love. And the more you give them that way, the more love you get. And so it's this cycle. And for a while, that feels so good to those of us who have this hole in our hearts. It feels like, oh, finally, finally something's fitting in there. Something feels good in there. And yet, you end up getting treated poorly by that very same person. And then you get confused, like, well, what is love anyway? Or love is just like this. People hurt the ones they love. Actually, people say that all the time. I think it's a song. But that's not actually necessary. But what is true is that those of us who have this complex trauma pain in our love spot, we will accept almost anything because we want it so badly, right? I mean, it's painful to want something this badly. So that's one of the things that plagues young people in particular who are moving into adulthood, who want to be loved and who can't really get that from their parents or aren't able to let their guard down enough to get it from their parents, then they seek it somewhere else. And it's usually somewhere not good for them just yet. Parents say that to young people all the time, and young people are like, yeah, whatever, you don't trust me, you don't want me to have a life, you don't want me to be loved, you just don't like him, you just don't like her. And what I can say to you is that those are universal sentences too. Some of that is true, no one's ever good enough for my child, but I don't think that's really everything that's at play. I think it's more to do with your seeking has brought to you someone who is not going to be good for you, and parents are more mature. And they do have a sense about harmful things because they're just older. That's it. They want to prevent you from having this broken heart that they feel like is inevitable when you choose the wrong partner. So I'm saying that to you because I feel like this is one of the things that plagues young people with complex developmental trauma that they don't really associate with complex trauma. They associate it with their parents holding them back or with certain genders being just, snotheads. And that's not really true. I mean, maybe some of it's true, but that's not what I mean. It's just about where you're at in your life and what you're willing to accept. And you're willing to accept less than you're actually worth because of your trauma. Now, some people do that with relationships and others do it with alcohol and drugs. Some people do it with friendships. Some people do it with food. You can try really hard to fill up that lonely, achy, hurty place in you with stuff, with doing, with being, with other people all the time. You can do whatever you want. You can dance as fast as you want to try and stay away from that feeling. But until you actually do the healing work, the trauma healing work, it's going to be there. It's going to bite you in the butt a lot. You don't want to get help. Somehow you don't think you deserve it, need it, want it, or it's too uncomfortable. But listen to this. If you got some help around the trauma, right? You just worked on the trauma. It is very likely that you would feel so relieved. That achy trauma part of you could be released and you could walk around on the earth feeling way more free, way more lovable, way more open to good things, to positive things, to what life has to offer you that sometimes you just turn your back on or shut the door on or just say, oh, screw it, I'm just going to kill myself. Because what you're going through is part of developmental trauma. You've moved into adulthood, but you don't feel ready, but you can't admit that, right? I mean, I couldn't admit that. And there's no going back, so it's just going forward. But what I want you to know is that developmental trauma has two prongs to it that affects your hardwiring. One of them is about emotions, managing emotions, which I told you about. But when you don't or aren't able to manage your emotions because that part didn't get hardwired in, what happens is you actually become something called, this is the fancy word for it, it's called dysmature. And all that means is that you keep getting older, but your emotional self is slower to develop. And so you actually probably aren't quite an adult yet. You probably still feel little sometimes. You might even get into conflicts with your parents, just like you did when you were 10 years old or 5 years old or whatever, when you wanted to go play and they said you couldn't. And if you're still doing that with your parents and you're in your 20s, then you can know that complex trauma is at work. You just aren't quite as mature as you want to be or as you even can be because of the trauma. Now, if you get some help, you can speed up your development and you can actually heal that part of you. But don't be down on yourself because you feel these things. And don't let other people put you down because you feel these things. This is just the way it is for right now. If you get a little braver and you seek some help, the maturing will go faster. But here's the truth. Even if you don't get help, by the time you're in your late 20s, you're going to feel so much better. You're going to feel so much more capable of looking at yourself and of admitting to your problems and of getting help anyway. It's just a little bit later than some of your peers who grew up in secure families who didn't have this trauma. So I wanted to say that to you to help you get some perspective on yourself, because you might be feeling like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know why this is happening. I feel so out of it. That's really, really, really common for kids who have this trauma. And I know I've said complex trauma like 500 times, but I'm trying to drive this point home that it's not you, right? It's not you. It's what happened to you. And now you're recovering. That's all. And if you understood more about the recovery, you could speed it along. I'm going to leave you here. Lucy, take care of yourself.